Good morning and welcome to the Coalition of Little Rock Neighborhoods meeting of Saturday, November the 9th, 2024. We are fortunate to have the City Interim Planning Director, Brad Jordan, with us today. We've got many policy concerns we'd like to discuss with him. We recognize that several of our faithful attendants are off with Chili in the Heights and the Cornbread Festival downtown and so forth, which is why the live streaming becomes particularly important. This will be posted on our Facebook page at clrn.ar when we conclude the meeting today. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the City of Little Rock Housing and Neighborhoods Director Kevin Howard, who offered to support the longtime work of this group, which meets in a city building, by providing us with free coffee. Woo-hoo. So the fact that you have a warm drink on a chilly morning is due to Kevin Howard's thoughtfulness in support of the Coalition of Little Rock Neighborhoods. Thank you and welcome. Sign in. And silence your cell phones, please. There we go. That's an interesting tone. What we'd like to do is introduce ourselves around the table so everybody knows who's there. Virgil, why don't you have a seat here, darling? That'll put you in a good position to visit everybody. As I said, I'm Kathy Wells. I'm the president of the coalition. I am also vice president of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. So my home is in the historic Governor's Mansion District downtown.
I'm Mary Hinthorn with Ward 4.
I'm Autumn Reams. I'm a member of the Heights Neighborhood Association.
Joshua Holt, her husband.
Jan Baker, Ward 4. Lawrence Jernigan, Ward 4.
I'm Brad Jordan. I'm the Director of Planning Development.
Anita Danielle Claiborne, President of Kenaway Neighborhood Association.
I'm Paul Dobbs, live in Central High, and I'm the Vice President of the Central High Neighborhood Association.
I'm Lee Beverly, just a concerned citizen. I live in Linwood.
I'm Robert Walker. I live in Ward 3 and a resident of the Capital Houston Station Neighborhood Association, but only representing myself.
John Hendry, Petaway Downtown Neighborhood Association.
Ward 1. My name is Virgil Miller. I'm on the Little Rock City Board of Directors. I represent Ward 1.
Welcome. We have plenty of chairs. Just pull one up to the table, John. We will make you welcome. Thank you for coming. The good news is that our first main topic of discussion, which was building support amongst the city directors for the purchase of a software program that would go on the internet and locate and identify the short-term rental units that are operating in our city, so we can then detect those that have no license and permit, so then the city officials can send them one of those greetings, get in compliance, or we'll send a citation after you letters. Brad Jordan, our interim planning director, is the one who's pursuing this work, and he is with us today. Brad?
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I really like coming and talking to groups like this, and when Kathy asked me to come and talk to the Coalition of Little Rock Neighborhoods, I was like, absolutely, I will come. I was supposed to be here a couple of months ago, but I had knee surgery for my meniscus, and so at that time I was laying in my bed, and you guys probably
Really good drugs.
I was going to say, you guys probably would not have wanted to talk to me at that time. I don't know exactly what the topic would have ended up being. But I grew up in Benton, and I always say I grew up in Benton, but I was raised in Little Rock because I graduated from Benton High School, but I ended up going to UA Little Rock. I have a degree, undergraduate degree in history, and another one in psychology. A couple years after that, I went back and got my master's degree in public history, which is sometimes a really cool way to say museums, but I used that sort of toward like historic preservation, because I was really into like old houses and old stuff, and the tangible things that you can like look at and you can point back to. And I always like looking at old pictures, like, oh my gosh, look right there. There's the witness tree, or there's the house that was there. So I've always been into historic preservation, but so my first job out of grad school, I got to work for Capital Zoning District Commission. And everyone knows what Capital Zoning District Commission is.
Where we met.
A very, very interesting little agency that I got to cut my teeth in. And so it's not only I got to use historic preservation, but it's using historic preservation, learning planning, learning zoning, understanding exactly what that is, but also learning how to use historic preservation toward the means of economic development. And so after that, I went to Main Street, Arkansas. I was the assistant director at Main Street, Arkansas for several years. And I got to travel all around the state, and I got to talk to all these wonderful people, and I got to see downtowns that were really great and really thriving, but also got to see downtowns that were not thriving at all. And then who was doing the things better, and how can we teach the downtowns to do better and sort of emulate what the successes have been. After that, I went to City of Benton. I was a Community and Economic Development Director for City of Benton for 7 years. There, I did everything from, planning parties for the mayor to running planning commissions to doing anything that the city needed me to do. Most of my effort was really toward downtown development, and what we did in Benton, if you went there 10 years ago and you go there now, you will not recognize it. What we did there in Benton, I'm really proud of. But just like all good college players, you got to go to the big leagues, right? So I was hired in 2022 as the development manager for the city of Little Rock, and I love working here. I love the city. I have a deep connection to it, just like I said. I could even go back when I was a young kid. I remember when University Mall opened. Was anyone alive? Does anyone remember that when that happened? This may be a fever dream of mine, but here's how I remember it. I remember that Craig O'Neill hosted it, and it was guest starred by a star of stage and screen, Mr. Corbin Burnson of LA Law fame. That may not have happened. I really don't know. I want to say it did. It's a really cool story to tell. But anyway, just to link back, I have a deep connection to Little Rock, and I really was raised here. And so I care a lot about what happens here. I care a lot about the city. And since we're the coalition of Little Rock neighborhoods, I care a lot about neighborhoods. And the more I thought about what I was going to say today, the whole neighborhood concept just kept running through my head. Like, what is neighborhood? Like, what is it? Is it people? Is it houses? What is it? I mean, what makes up neighborhood? So we're going to talk about short-term rentals, and I think that short-term rentals, when you talk about neighborhood, it directly affects it. I don't really like giving speeches or talks. I like giving conversations. And so
we can interrupt with questions?
Absolutely, Kathy.
Okay.
Please interrupt with because there will be a question and answer session as we go along. So who here has dealt either positively or negatively with short-term rentals? Who here owns a short-term rental? Mr. Dodds, yes. Who here has a negative experience with short-term rentals? Paul. So tell me, when you're saying you had a negative experience, what was your negative experience?
Most of the neighbors did not want the short-term rental in the neighborhood.
Okay.
So they appealed to the planning commission to not let it become a short-term rental, but it was approved by the city.
Okay. Ended up approved by the board of directors?
No, it went to the planning commission, and the planning commission did not approve it.
Oh, they did not.
Appeal to the city.
And they did not appeal it. What would the address on that one? Do you know?
Rivercrest Drive.
Okay.
In Walton Heights.
I remember that one. Robert, what do you have?
My particular problem is a short-term rental won't know what to do. We got green garbage cans, we got the green and yellow top, recycling, which will save us a lot of money in the long run, because if we recycle, we don't fill up our city dump. Well, the short-term rentals have no idea what they're doing. They put trash into the recycling bin. The guy won't pick it up, and it's an orphan bin from then on. Something has to be done to solve it, and that's my real big problem with short-term rentals, is they don't know the rules. Of course not. They weren't here. They haven't been here for a while. and they'll wind up polluting our recycle bins, and there's no fix for it.
I mean, unfortunately, you know, when you have these sort of micro rentals and you have this rapidly transient population coming in and out of these neighborhoods, they don't know, or they don't care. You know, it could be that, could be both of those. They don't know, or it doesn't really matter to them. They're going to leave here anyway, and it's somebody else's problem. But Paul, I'm interested in what you have to say, because you and I have talked a lot, and you do have short-term rentals. Explain to me how your negative experience is.
As a host, you are completely subject to the platform, which is a mixed blessing. It's a lot. There are a lot of work. I would like to see the city get better control of short-term rentals, because I'm competing as a licensed short-term rental with hundreds of unlicensed rentals, and I can't do anything. And if the city does not assert jurisdiction of the other rentals, I rent for, I'm kind of in it. I've closed three of them, and have two that I've kept near my house. I think that the city could really use short-term rentals as a way of encouraging reinvestment. About 30% of the houses in that neighborhood are vacant, and there's a lot of vacant lots. We are in a totally different situation than the Heights, than where you live. We have a lot of vacancy and decades and decades of disinvestment. And which makes it, I closed the two across from Central High because I got terrible location reviews. People were frightened of being there. A lot of guests would rather be in your neighborhood than in my neighborhood. But if the money comes to my neighborhood, we can start rebuilding. And there's nothing in the process now that helps us do that.
That's an interesting concept. Paul, thanks for sharing about that. Anybody else want to say anything about that?
Mine, well, I'm not gonna say where I live, but it's next door to me. And at one point, there were parties, and I have dogs, and then people complain about my dogs barking all night. Well, there's people, and then when you have them, when it's really short, like every other weekend or something, my dogs don't know them. But when it comes to someone that's running for long term, they'll get to know them, and so they'll know to shut up or be quiet. Sure. But now I have someone there, I just met him. He's short term, but he's really there like 6 months to a year, and I'm praying that he stays a year,
Right.
Him and his wife, and I like the bonding that now we have, because now we're looking out for each other.
That's right. You hit on a great point. That to me is neighborhood, right? That it's the socialization. It's the thing that we've been doing for millennia. It's tribal. It's people taking care of each other. You know, you hear the phrase, it takes to raise a child, it takes many people, right? It takes a village. And so, to me, short-term rentals are of two minds. And I think from a city standpoint, we have to think of it like that. Planning, we have to think of it like that. We have to balance between property rights, of this is my property, I can do what I want to with it, and what is neighborhood. And when you start chipping away at neighborhood, when you have, let's just say you had a neighborhood that had, everyone had lived there on your block and they had lived there for 20 years, 30 years, whatever. You get to know those people. You get to know, you might have book clubs with them. You might have, you might be able to watch, know who they are and get to know them, and you might invite them for Christmas. Or even if you leave town, you can trust someone's going to be able to watch your place, right? You might have block parties. You might have all of these things, and that's neighborhood. That's cohesion. That helps everyone know each other. And if you have a diversified neighborhood, imagine what that can teach you about others. But let's just say now, then you start chipping away at that. Let's just take one of those houses out, two of those houses out, three of those houses out. So who do you have watching your house? Because the person that then is living next door to you might not be there for 2 days, and then somebody else comes in. And then 3 more down the street. And so then you start taking away this thing. And so this this precious thing that we had disappears, right? And so I think that that's what the city has to deal with. And then when in June, you can't see it, so say 2023.
No, we can't read that. What is that, the original ordinance? They
Yes,
have
that is the original ordinance. Obviously, that's just the very first part of it, just for a graphic to put there. So we had an ordinance that was passed in June of 2023. I know that the board of directors worked on it for a really long time. Director Miller, I'm sure, can speak to it. How much discussion was had about crafting this ordinance. And the way I see it is at that time, we didn't know what we didn't know. We had to put something in place, just like with any disruptive technology. Just like, I mean, think about what like the East Coast did when Uber came in. They were behind. So they had to try to do something to counterbalance that. And so that's what we did. We had to do something to try to counterbalance what the short-term rentals were actually doing here in the city. So what the ordinance set up, and I just put some key points up here. I hope this is a little bit better, easier to read. So we established STR1s and STR2s. So STR1s are going to be your traditional Airbnbs, or it may not be an Airbnb, but it's somebody that lives within 1,500 feet of that property. So it's basically, you have an eye on your property at all times. So it's more of an ownership thing. It's more of a, you're on site making sure that nothing bad happens. You don't have loud neighbors or loud individuals coming in at Airbnbs. STR2s, those are owned by people. They don't have to live anywhere near their house. They can actually live out of state, in fact. We do, in the ordinance, it does say that they have to be responsive, I believe within, if I read it correctly, I believe within 60 minutes of any issue. So a lot of times, these folks are having local agents go up, make their application, clean their property when it's done. It's more of a one-stop shop thing that is, it's a sort of a niche market that has developed a little bit around what STRs are.
Brad, let me point out here that these are coming in under the rather standard city rental ordinances for long-term rental, with which we have been engaged since we got the inspection of rentals ordinance passed in '94. So we are very concerned and we keep on pursuing stronger and better services in that regard. And one of the things that we've gotten into that structure is that if you are an absentee owner defined as outside the city limits of Little Rock, you are required by law to be in compliance and properly permitted and licensed by the naming of an agent for notice of service within the city who could be immediately served in the legal terms.
Right.
That's slightly different from someone who can come over and attend in housekeeping.
Right.
But once there is a problem that rises to notifying authorities, let's call it the police and an OC party, because that's a lot of it, then that person has got to be accessible in the records, and the cops come knocking on that person's phone number and door potentially. My impression is that's not, in fact, what you're seeing. And you'll time and again encounter some problem, and they have either named no notice and it's slipped by the city's enforcement policies, or there is one who's performing badly, let's say. So let's hear about that.
Yeah, Kathy, it's both of those things. I mean,
they're not exempt from any of the standard
right.
agent for notice rules.
Right. So what we've seen happen is they will have someone that is watching out for their property, and a lot of times these people are not as on top of it as they should be. They'll come to the planning commission, and if there's any problem, if they're trying to get another, let's say this group is trying to get another short-term rental, and they're going to be using this group. There are a lot of times that people will come out and say, they're not doing it right. We have this, 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 and this. And we've seen at times, I mean, people have been up there at the podium and said, yeah, we're very sorry, we missed that. So, I mean, that is certainly something that we have to work out within this process. And I mean, and figuring it out is an ongoing process. Having, doing things like what you just said, I think that would help. And I think that, we certainly would consider that. I mean, we need somebody that is local and somebody that is responsible. Because we can't have...
It's in the law. Why don't you just enforce it, Brad? Because it's planning commission staff that does it for the STR.
Right.
So I'm at a loss as to why we aren't getting enforcement.
Well, a lot of times we're playing catch up, Kathy. We don't know, who's, and we'll get to that in a second. A lot of times we don't know who's supposed to be contacted, and we do try, and we really do. So, but again.
But that's part of the licensing process. There should be a line on the form that says,
yeah.
Brad is the agent for Kathy's STR, and
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have one, if you have a blank there, or you've got some of the stuff I'm hearing about, oh, well, our Hot Springs folks are doing it.
Yeah.
And they throw that on the page. I mean,
Yeah.
that should be pretty self-evident.
Yeah.
What am I missing here?
And they do have, there is agents, Paul.
Yeah, they do, but the vast majority of them aren't licensed, so they don't have any information.
Oh, yes, that is
So
a
that-
different category, yes, sir.
So I think you've got to separate licensed from non-licensed. So non-licensed, like, well, who knows? Licensed, they do know, and you do have some obligations, but non-licensed, like, whatever happens. Which is one thing. I think there's a huge difference between full houses and single apartments. I have one-bedroom apartments.
Mm-hmm.
I have occupancy limits. I have no more than 2 people. None of that is in the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have anything to limit occupancy, or any way to limit occupancy, which is, so you have ways to limit noise, but not occupancy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's like, I had two two-bedroom apartments, and it wasn't worth it doing STRs with them, because I could make more from rent, more predictably just having single units. So for me, one-bedroom apartments, I mean, it doesn't solve the, who's coming and going problem, but it certainly solves the congestion problem and the party house problem. I don't let parties, and I think, you can have house rules, and you can tell people, you've got to have this in your house rules, and then, try to get it enforced.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem.
Paul, curious, does Airbnb have any check? As you as a owner, lister, host, do you have to show them that you are licensed?
No, they don't, there's
Yeah,
nothing.
okay, I'm
There's
just curious.
nothing. I mean, they need to assert-
Capitalism in the raw.
they need to assert jurisdiction over the
Yeah,
platforms.
okay.
Until they assert jurisdiction over the platforms, they'll be pushing on a string. Other towns do that. They need to find the platforms, $10 a day for unlicensed people.
Mm-hmm.
End of story. And then they would deplatform everybody. And until they do that, I mean, this is an interim thing to get the software, but it won't solve my problem of vacancies or of my problem of having Airbnbs be potentially usable as a development tool, because I can't compete. I mean, I'm making barely, like maybe a little more than I would as a normal rental. It's kind of hardly worth it, but I'm just kind of holding on to it, figuring, we'll see what happens with the city.
I like the concept of using it as a development tool is something that we hadn't heard of.
What people, I've talked about it again and again and again, and maybe people don't listen, but I talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
Send the letter again. We posted it before.
We pushed that very hard.
What do you mean you haven't heard it before?
STR ordinance, and at one point, it appeared that people were listening, and the final draft came down.
Do I have to camp out in the planning department?
Come on, Paul, you're always welcome.
It was a huge issue during the development of the ordinance.
It was, and we were quite vocal in support of it, because Central Hyatt is a dues-paying member of our group, plus we really support historic preservation, and
Sure.
we are, shall we say, in full recognition of the history of the place. So
Sure.
we don't want to do anything, we don't want our city to do anything that hurts that.
Right.
And they just blew it off, so let's bring it back and revisit it. This group, I think, very strongly would like you to revisit that rule.
Hey, I'm always Paul, you have my number, you know. You got my number.
I think Jan and then Josh. What, I must have missed that, I took a little snooze at, I guess, but what was blown off exactly that the city blew off that
To
you
use
slept
this
on?
as an opportunity for redevelopment of distressed, vacant, and,
For instance, there was one draft which had this whole thing that if you were to renovate an unsafe and vacant house, that you could have 10-year Airbnb rights. That just kind of evaporated. I thought, well, that's great. I don't know, maybe Hannah put it in or maybe you put it in. And then it just kind of got knocked out. It was like, I mean, we have huge vacancy problems. I mean, there's hundreds of vacant houses in the old parts of the city, and which are very hard to get investment in. These are hard projects. I've redone.
If you turn them into a cash cow, by golly, you could turn that around.
Yeah. These are sort of thin cows, they're thin cows unless you can get some limitations on STRs citywide. Yeah. You know.
How many short-term rentals are currently licensed? Short-term 1 and 2.
Short-term 1 and 2, hold that question for just a second. We have a surprise. I'll answer your question. Did you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned the commission is behind, or like playing catch up. You have X number of licenses already, we'll get to that in a moment.
Yep.
But let's say there's 5,000 locations in the city, you're licensing 500, so there's 4,500 out there, you're already playing catch up. What is the criteria the planning commission is going after in terms of prioritization of where your enforcement time is being spent? Right? Exclude licensed folks. Is it the dwelling where like STR1 applicable folks, STR2 applicable folks? Is it the party houses? Is it the people in the garages that have been renovated? What, when you think about the Airbnb criteria,
Yeah.
What you can select, is it guest to bedroom ratios? What is that criteria?
Well, first off, I don't think we've had any complaints about anyone running an STR1. I mean, honestly, I don't think that we've had one complaint about that. STR2s, we hear about that a lot of times, but what we hear about is my neighbors are running an STR. Come and look at it. But so are you asking like what the levels are? Like if it's a 2-bedroom house, 3-bedroom house, 5-bedroom house, is it the density of who can be there is what is the question you're asking?
Well, ignore the licensed folks already, ignore the kind of noisy neighbor complaint that a lot of voice already gets heard.
Sure.
But in terms of what is the planning commission actually prioritizing from a risk standpoint, from a non-compliance standpoint? Is it the houses that can house 12 people, houses that can only house 2 people, houses in lower income neighborhoods, higher income neighborhoods, based on revenue, based on occupancy rates throughout the entire year?
We haven't put any criteria on the things that we're looking for. I mean, what we do is we just take applications. I mean, it could be somebody that comes in. So we're not saying that, oh, we have too many from Ward 1 or we have too many from Ward 3 coming in. We'll put these on next month. It's really to us. It's if you make the deadline, you make the deadline.
So when it comes to enforcement, it's really about the people who nobody makes a complaint about an SCR.
Right.
Never.
We never know about it. Exactly. If no one makes, that's a great point. If no one makes a complaint about it, we have no idea about it. And so we have a master list of, how many have been approved by planning, but ultimately approved by the board of directors. We have that list, and so if we get a complaint, we'll look at that list. It's not on there. We'll send our enforcement folks out there, and 9 times out of 10, the complaint is correct. I mean, they are running an SDR without it being gone through the process. But the process, and I'll say this just so we can just keep moving this forward. 29 days is the max. So anything over 29 days, you are long-term rental. So I think that protects things like traveling nurses and people that they don't stay in a place for a year, but they might stay there for 3 months, something like that. And that's both for STR1s and STR2s. And in the ordinance, the cap is 500 STRs within the city limits. So let's go through the process. Paul, I'm sure you're familiar with this process. Maybe you can get up and show us exactly the eccentricities of all of this. So let's just play I'm applicant Brad Jordan. So what I do is I'll come to the planning department or I'll online. I will get my application, and so I'll fill out my application. I will look at everything that's required. We require site plans. We require surveys. We require parking plans. We require a letter, just sort of stating what your project is. I tell people be as detailed as you can in that letter, because our staff is going to write our report based on what you have, the information you've given us. We'll go out and try to seek information if we don't have it, pertinent information, but the more you tell us about it, I think the better the project really is. So they'll come, they'll do that, and then 2 months later, we work on a 2-month review process. So 2 months later, they will come before the Planning Commission. And so let's just say that the Planning Commission says yes. They are then moved. That doesn't mean you can do it. Then they can go to the Board of Directors. That's when they go to the board. But if the Planning Commission says no, their appeal body is the Board of Directors. So, like most things, the Board of Directors is the ultimate arbiter of what happens in the city. There have been times that the Planning Commission has denied something and the board has overturned it. There's been times when the Planning Commission has said, yes, we love this, and the board will say, no, we don't like this at all. So then what they can do is, and what we have seen happen, and this is a bit of a loophole that we're going to have to fix, is let's just say, hypothetically, that the Board of Directors says no. They can appeal it to civil court, or what we've seen happen is they'll come back to planning, and they're supposed to wait a year. If you get denied by the Board of Directors, they're supposed to wait an entire year. But in one instance, and I won't tell where this is, but this is just to describe the gray area loophole that I'm talking about. They came back in and they said, okay, here's a new application. So instead of 11 people, 8 people. Look, we didn't provide this information and this information on the other one. Look, we provided it now. Do you see it's different? And so our bylaws are vague at best. And it says that the application cannot be it has to be substantially different than the last one. There is no definition of what substantially different is. In this particular case, when they made this application after the board had denied it, I immediately denied the application because I didn't see that it was different. To me, use is use. If they're using it as an Airbnb and you get denied as an Airbnb and you're coming and reapplying as an Airbnb, that's the same thing to me. They disagreed with that, and any appeal of staff's decision can go down here to the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment can say staff erred in their judgment or staff was right in their judgment. Let's just say that they say that we erred in our judgment, that it is substantially different. They start the process all over again. All the while, they're probably in court and they're telling the judge, look, we're making an application. Look, we're still going through the process, and the judge is going to give them more time, and they're still operating their short-term rental at this time, you know, illegally, but using the process to stay in business. So
What a clever lawyer, but the billable hours must be through the roof.
you know,
These are rich
I have
folks.
some thoughts about that, but yes, I would say the billable hours are pretty
Through the
aggressive.
roof.
Through the roof on that one, because probably through the law firm roof. Well, happy ending in that case. That application. It was at the Board of Adjustment level, and then they withdrew it, and everyone was happy. I was especially happy about this. Not only the neighbors, and I was especially happy about this because that was, it could have set a precedent that it was just would have been very awkward to deal with. But going through, again, when the ordinance was drafted, we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know that would happen. We had no clue about that, just now.
Have you now opened a new file with the base question about submitting proposals for revision to the city STR ordinance that was passed in 2023?
We have
Or we
not.
formally said we're gonna fix it, and the case file is open?
I think that we're going to start with the software first. I think the software implementation and looking at our ordinance are going to work hand in hand together. And so we're going to.
I don't think you need a response about finding X, Y, Z in minutes to let us have our say and renew the investment tool idea.
Yeah.
And get that working through the process.
Hey,
If I encourage you, open a file now.
Yeah. No. Hey, listen. I'm always up for discussions and making process better. Because I think if we make process better, we make our city better.
Well, if there's a place that we can submit and maybe a deadline, I realize that would be fine. That is what we would look for from government.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that we chat and we go home and there's no action. It's that we chat and something advances.
Yeah.
Or we're told, no, you ain't gonna get it. But yes, no, or go to hell, let's do something.
Yeah. That's right.
Old phrase in my family.
Director Miller, what do you feel about
I mean, one of the,
looking at our ordinance again?
I mean, I definitely think it needs to be looked at again.
Yes.
No doubt about that. You'll see serious support, excuse me, from the board to do that. You had enough feedback about, what we have put in process. And sometimes, quite frankly, when you put something out there, then you wait a little bit and see what needs to be tweaked. And so that's where we are with this at this point. We know that it needs to be tweaked, and so that's where we are. And so definitely support some changes to the ordinance.
Yes, sir. I agree. All right, here's the pop quiz portion of our discussion, and it goes to your question. How many do you think that we've passed that are licensed? How many do you think? Out of 500, we have a 500 cap. How many do you think since 2023 that are licensed right now?
I have no idea. 125.
Good guess. Anybody else?
I'd say 125.
Okay.
I'll go 127.
Hey, we're going prices right here.
220.
220. All right, y'all. 107.
I was 20 off.
107. Since June of 2023. Now, I will tell you this, that the ordinance was passed in June of 2023. We had individuals that were planning for this. And again, we work on a 2-month review process. They were ready to go in July. Our first STR was passed in July of 2023, and that was the first one that was passed by the board. So before the ordinance, there were 12 individuals that came in. whether it was an STR1, STR2, but since then, 14 STR1s and 81 STR2s. We've also had one that is in our extraterritorial jurisdiction that is planning, parlance for the area.
The 3 miles out.
Outside of our city limits, but we still sort of have a stake in. We have one of those that have passed in that area. But I think that is seeing that number right there. You got to think to yourself, if it's taken us this long to get to 107, how long is it going to take us to get to 500? So, but let's look at something even different, and I think that this is a bit more striking in that when we see it. I don't know if you all can see this very well, but I'll sort of interpret for you. This is the city map. This shows the dispersion of STRs within the city. You can see that down at the bottom, we'll just start with Ward 7. Ward 7 has 1 STR. Ward 2 has none. No STRs at all. Ward 6 has 4. Ward 5 has 1. Ward 4 has 4. And then we get to the bulk. And then we get to Director Miller's ward, Ward 1. And it has 44 STRs. And 53 STRs are in Ward 3. I'm sure the people that live at Hillcrest Heights know all about that. And there are probably more. There are probably a lot more than 53, but to me, that stands out the most. What does this tell you? When you look at this map, does this tell you anything?
People want to rent old houses.
People want to rent old houses? Anything else?
The revenue of that location, as far as businesses and things to do for visitors, are more fluent or bigger choices.
That's an excellent point.
It's an access to the attractions that brought them to the city. It's
Exactly.
nearby.
Exactly.
It's not down in Ward 7, it's not outside the territorial district.
Right. And let's just say Hillcrest, for example. Hillcrest has a wonderful stock of historic homes. Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, you can go from Queen Anne style to Craftsman and, one street over. Great stock of historic homes. And we live in an Instagram society. And the better pictures you take, and the cuter those little dainty gingerbread aspects of your house are, and the more cool the inside your house can be, the better those pictures look. I would say the better you're going to get someone that wants to, when they come to Little Rock, they're like, we got to stay here. It's there. So
another thing to keep in mind is, in some years past now, I remember being informed by someone at the city that Hillcrest had passed a significant milestone in that more than 50% of the housing stock was rental. Then, of course, it was only long-term rental.
Mm-hmm.
But that was generally considered to be, especially then, not so much now, a sign that the neighborhood was in decline, because if you didn't have majority homeownership with the investment in, I live here, I've got to keep it up, I've got to take care of problems, I've got to work with my neighbors to protect and defend, shall we say, against decline and deterioration. And there was a whole bunch of flutter that faded. The decline did not go over the cliff, but that also means when this showed up as a new business model, they had an awful lot of opportunity properties and locations sitting there already in the rental category. I don't know that you paid attention to that, but that might be useful to track and look at.
Yes, ma'am. So, I think the thing that we were asked about earlier, and it's our short-term rental software company we're partnering with is GovOS. We discussed this in our budget meeting yesterday, so I feel strongly I can say this, that originally we thought that GovOS was going to cost us around $88,000, but they're part of a co-op that the city is involved with, so it's going to cost us half of that. Really,
So
half,
$44,000.
about $44,000.
Is that annually?
And so what they're going to do is they are going to give us the list. They're going to help us track it. It's going to be a real-time list. It's not just going to be, here's your list, go get them. Because the way I look at it is once you get that list is out of date the next day. Because you don't know. Someone may have put their property on Airbnb, Verbo, or any of the little smaller clone software companies just like this that are sort of trying to get into the market. So here's, yes ma'am, go ahead.
They're pulling the list for you from Airbnb and VRBO and creating a list for you to go out and check and see
Yes.
if they're licensed.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
They're scraping the internet with proprietary software that gives us will give us a list. So it gives us a snapshot at that moment. Yes, sir.
Can they get to the actual location where if I go on Airbnb, it'll just give a general area rather than a specific address until I pay?
It's going to give us a parcel number. It's going to
All
give
right.
Okay.
There's going to be no mistake about where this is. They're going to give us a parcel number. But Robert, I think you had your hand up. I don't want to move on before.
I was gonna suggest, while Director Miller was here, that, that wonderful institution down there on University, further south, that you attended, has a bunch of smart kids that are majoring in computer science and all that stuff that I don't, and the city could offer like $10,000 or $20,000 for people doing senior projects, saying, look, we need this software. You can complete this as part of your course, and we will pay a prize to get this software. That
It's an interesting concept. I like the let's get them started sort of like
that they start thinking
like
about
a maker space sort of.
What can we do for our city that will, with the skills we have?
Huh. I like it, Robert. Get that started. So here is what we're working on now. Is because GovOS has a process, and we have a process, and we got to marry those two things together. Because they have to work within what we already do. And they help cities all the time, but a lot of cities don't have planned developments. They don't do it as, going through planning commissions or going through boards of directors. They just go out and say, let's just say Hilton Head, for example, or Vail. They want their STR market to be great. They want, please come
Wide
here.
open boomtown.
Come here and do this. And so what they do a lot is just take applications, payments, and then they get right with GovOS, and then they send the city as like, here's a list of the people that got it right. That cannot happen with us, because here is what we're having to deal with, and I think it's three-pronged really. So once we get that list, and once we have GovOS, send out to say, let's just say there are, I'm just throwing a number out there, 600 in the whole city, minus the 107 that we have. So, for my lack of math skills, 500. Sending out a letter to 500 people saying, you are doing wrong and you need to get right, or we're going to send you a citation to go to court. That means that my staff is going to receive, hypothetically, 500 new applications. How do you process that? How does the staff, first off, is it a first come, first serve? Do we do it by ward? How do we do this? So there's one.
What about at this point, revising this statute already on the books to address the issues of density. We don't need to have all of us owning the houses on a block. We don't need some fat cat that owned Big Country Chateau last year coming in out of New Jersey and buying up an entire block in Ward 1, which they could do, and turning every single one of them into STRs. So you've got this abscess on the community block. That would be one way that you can then guide your applications, because you put at the back of the line the people who are trying to go where there's already X available. You put at the back of the line those that are going to try and cluster or overcome your density rule, whatever that is. We knew enough from our previous research to know that these issues have been addressed in other cities, and there's something we can just steal from another city and put into place for us. And that would then guide you. I would also like to raise a question. When you hit application number 501, what then is the response? Is it going to be, we will never lift the cap, or we're gonna do something else? And one of the things we'd like to throw into the discussion at that point is, we're recognizing it's a real loss to long-term rentals to move these into the STR category. We've already established since 2023 that we will accept 500 loss to the long-term rental market. But what if we do a rule that says from 501 on, we will not accept a straightforward single standing STR applications? What if we pair this with a long-term rental and we say, Kathy can't get her rental STR status unless and until there is a matching paired long-term rental unit that's coming through the process for permitting and licensing. And that way we don't lose anything. Now, you talk about the investment in the Central High neighborhood. I'm already looking to get a cash cow. I'm already a rather wealthy investor. That seems to be how this works. Poor folks ain't doing STRs.
Right.
And these ain't affordable income.
Right.
So maybe what we do is I scratch up a few more dollars and I, in effect, invest in the long-term rental to get me my cash cow. Somebody who's better at numbers needs to be looking at that, Mr. Banker. But I think it is worth pursuing and looking at as a potential model, because we are admittedly, and it repeated at the city budget meeting yesterday, in a crisis for shortage of housing. And keep in mind that half the city of Little Rock lives in rent housing. So we've got a lot of people that need to be served.
Sure.
And every loss from that total pinches.
Yes.
And we don't even talk about the affordable housing loss, which is even more critical.
Sure.
So I'll shut up about that.
Yeah, no, great point. Great point. Yes, sir.
How many letters have you sent out?
Well, we have it. We just now had our first meeting with GovOS on
No. You mentioned earlier, you have, someone complains, you go out, you see indeed it is an STR, it's unlicensed. How many letters have you sent out to those STR? Unlicensed STR.
The unlicensed ones, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but most of the time, if we send a letter out to them and tell them that they're gonna have to go to court or come to the planning commission or planning department, they choose the planning department. So I don't have.
So you do have a fairly good compliance rate with those letters?
Fairly good, yeah. I mean, because again, if they don't stop what they're doing, we're gonna give them a citation and they have to go tell the court why they're doing it. It behooves them to say, I have made an application, Judge, to the planning department, and they are, in 2 months, they're gonna hear my application. It's better to do that than say that I just didn't wanna follow the rules. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, conversations with Brian Contino over the rental inspections group.
Mm-hmm.
This group, or, at large, I think the city's aware that we don't know, just like we don't know the short term, where they are, it applies to long-term rentals as well. Is this software gonna be used to solve the long-term rental map question
this, from where I live,
Yeah.
is just for short-term rentals. Does this company have that capability? I think that they probably do. I think that the short-term rental piece is an a la carte aspect of what they can, from a larger standpoint. Because I think they do permitting, I think they do code enforcement, I think they do a whole lot of what is the operating system for the local governments. And I believe a lot of small cities and cities on the West Coast use this one. But I want to go back to the overwhelming nature that this can become, because I mentioned planning staff would be overwhelmed. But let's say that those people, to your point, don't comply. So then our staff has to go out and give citations to 500 people, right? I don't know how long that would take. It would probably take a bit. But then...
You've only got 2 on staff doing this, right?
Well, Paul, we have 6.
I have 6.
Yeah.
Well, what about one of those temporary contracts? Maybe hiring some of these eager beaver public service UALR students. I would pair them with a cop, you understand?
Yeah, oh, of course. We any sort of nuanced thing we can do, but that leads to a larger point. Then we would be overburdening the court system. So if Judge Leverett is used to having 10 items on his docket, and
He gets paid,
right?
He gets elected.
That's very true. But what I'm saying is, where do you put those in the queue? I mean,
You shut them down until they comply, right? He just does a wholesale shut down and come back when you're in compliance.
In a perfect world, I think that would be the case.
Yes, I didn't think that would be accepted, but I did want to put it on record.
You've had 7, 15 months. How much manpower or man-hours goes into a single idealistic approval process?
It takes our staff weeks to contact the owner, get with, because we're doing this on phone, emails, and so we're having to get information. And
Not necessarily wall clock time, but actual man hours. Like how much, if they were to be billing their time.
oh,
Yeah, is it like 8 hours for 2 straight weeks, or like?
oh wow. So they are, so 8 hours for about 2 straight weeks. Yeah, I mean, they're working. The SCRs have overwhelmed us a bit. There are times when we've had a ton of them, but then over time, as time has gone by, that has lessened and lessened and lessened and lessened. And I think that you can probably guess why that is the case. Until we get the GovOS software, I don't think that we're going to know what all is out there. And then what happens when we do know what's all out there. So there's just a lot of discussion that we have to have as a staff. There's a lot of discussion that we have to have with groups like you, because really when it comes down to it, it is about the neighborhood and what the neighborhood wants. And what I have seen when someone comes out for an STR, if nobody from the neighborhood shows up and nobody says anything about it, it will sail through. No one, they will not say anything about it. But I'll tell you what, if the neighborhood shows up and they are adamant and they are vocal and they are saying, this shouldn't be here because of this XYZ, all the plethora of reasons, that normally speaks volumes. So what I mean is, if you don't want an SCR in your neighborhood, you need to tell the planning commission about it. You need to tell the board of directors about it. Because we don't live in those areas. We try our best when we have an application to go over and really do our best to say yes or no, but we don't live there. If we don't, there are no like police reports or complaints that we can actually tangibly look back at and say, this is a problem. Or we can't go out and say, oh, yeah, the parking is going to be an issue here. What do we go on? We don't know if there's been parties there for 6-8 months. Maybe someone hasn't called it in. But I'll tell you, if you have a group of people that come in and tell the planning commission or tell the board of directors that look at the bad actors that there have been here. Do we really want this for our neighborhood? And that speaks a lot.
Bad actor is another provision that needs to be added to STRs. In fact, to the entire rental inspection program of the city ordinances. Because there have been repeated offenders. There have been repeated offenders going through environmental court that were given too many passes. The real example for this is Big Country Chateau owners. And now they own other properties, and I believe that there's some issue coming back to the community. I'm hazy about that information there. But there should simply be a prohibition against bad actors getting permits and license for new rentals in the city of Little Rock for cause. And the cause is the record.
Yeah.
And we don't have that, but we should have a bad actor clause.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without this software, do you have any accurate way to discover unlicensed, or is it just by exception, somebody reporting, hey, and then check to see?
Well, I think someone, this gentleman over here referenced it. We can go on to Airbnb or VRBO and try to search for, I mean, they're not getting, when they put those little stars on the maps, I promise you those stars are not geolocated.
Right.
It is, they're not geopositioned. So they're just saying, hey, here's what it is. And so it is in their best interest that cities like us don't know that. You know? Because but we have, and again, someone talking about manpower, we have gone through and looked at these houses and tried to, do reverse photo searches, and maybe we can find
Google
an address.
Earth.
Yeah, maybe we can find an address that way. And our code officers have, they're really good at it now, looking at a house and saying, oh, I recognize that one. That one's like 5 blocks from where the star is. So again,
That sounds like a category really for some tips. Contractor jobs. You're trying to handle a massive stuff reasonably timed.
Yeah.
And once again, we think that we may get some additional benefits out of long-term employment for the city if we go to college students in the computer department at UALR.
Yeah.
For that matter, you might see about making some of this a project for the students at the Clinton School of Public Service. If you've not gone in that direction, go there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. But you see, I mean, we have 6 officers, right? So we're dealing with SDRs here, but there is a large other bunch of problems that are not anywhere related to what a short-term rental is in the city, that from a commercial zoning standpoint that we have to be on top of. So there's some issues, but we have a great staff. We have yes, ma'am.
So can we just get a recap of what the software is going to do? It's going to find, classify,
It's going to find them.
help with paperwork.
It is going to help with. It is going to help. It is going to send a letter from us, has planning and development, letterhead
For the non-compliant.
for the non-compliance. Like, hey, we see you. It won't say that. Like, it will say something a lot better than that.
Yeah.
But it'll basically say, we know you're running a short-term rental. You need to come to the planning department, and you need to work with us, and you need to make application. So
So it's just doing those 2 things, nothing beyond like enforcement.
Well, yes. So then they'll come to us, and then we will be working through the software saying, okay, they are compliant, and so it'll go into this other category, and so then they will be able to track and help us keep up with our master list at the end. So we're really working hand in hand together. We have not onboarded this yet at all. I mean, again, we've had one meeting since we, and the meeting basically discussed process, how we, again, marry one process with another one. Yes, ma'am.
How frequently would they repeat the search? You've already pointed out that these things understandably become out of date almost overnight. So are they doing a daily search or what? Is there interval?
They can do a daily search, weekly search.
What would you ask them for, I'm guessing?
Probably maybe a week, couple of weeks worth, maybe a month
Are you familiar
worth.
with the wonderful operation we have over in the city treasury department, which is handling the business licenses of the city?
Mhm.
And the fact that they, every Monday, post an updated list of who has purchased a license
Yeah.
in the city of Little Rock. I submit that might be useful linking on timing.
Yeah. Guys, I'm about to be super over my time. I told you I was long-winded, Kathy.
Well, you're not over your time, but we may need to go on to some other topics
Yes.
than this particular software.
So let's go to this. I didn't know what else to call this, but hot topics. It was something that Kathy sent me.
Yeah.
It was just a list of what Kathy sent me, and I needed to have something at the top, and hot topic was the first thing that came up, so I apologize for my lameness. So number one, look at us. We're already knocking these out already. We've dealt with the software. So we talked about number two. What are we going to do after 500? I mean,
Do you have any solutions or anything that you know about from other cities?
I do not know any solutions right now other than to say you have to wait in line. And it may be, I mean, again, we've called them cash cows here, but I think there's been a lot, I think that there has, you could probably point to a lot of Airbnbs that have not been so successful. That they may come on 1 month, 2 months, and they see that they don't want to do this. And then that's back on the market again. So then when we get our list, they'll say, oh no, you don't have 105 or 100 anymore, you have 497. And so then we would, whoever had come to us before, we would reach out to them, hey, are you still interested in doing this? A spot has come open. But with us being at 107, I don't know. And then with, what is that volume after GovOS going to be for the Planning Commission and for the board? What's a reasonable volume for that, to process those? So,
Yeah, I can appreciate that's all unknown territory.
yeah.
We will invite you now back a year from now to see how it's all turned out.
I would love, hey, I would love to come back here a year from now. Like, invite me anytime that you want. Did you? Okay. Roger, what's up?
Basically, the city has spent hundreds of dollars per short-term rental that we know about now. I mean, what is it, $500 at least for short-term rental? And then the staff time to process is gonna cost lots of money.
Right.
It just boggles my
Yeah, I wouldn't say we were losing money. I mean, every one of these people have to pay at least $200 for an application fee.
Oh.
So we're,
What is your benefit on enforcement? So when you file a.
What are the fines?
oh, what are the fines? That's what the judge, we don't levy fines. The judge levies fines.
That'll be probably the environmental court state statutes that they could be fined up to $500 a day for noncompliance, which nobody's attained yet, despite my strong urgings over the decades.
I have never
to do
heard.
that.
I have never heard of anyone getting the
They don't do it.
that level. Let's see.
But let me point out one thing here that applies not only in this category, but the larger one. We're talking about dealing with our shortage of rentals. And we're talking about, there was something in the budget meeting yesterday, Director Miller, about the environmental court is holding a lot of cases because nobody wants to throw the little old lady in the gutter. We need to distinguish between the business model of a rental, especially an STR rental, and ownership. And where their further category is that the little old lady isn't getting herself into compliance because she cannot afford it. And I remember distinctly a conversation with Judge Leverett of Environmental Court directly to me, saying that he was not in the business of imposing fines on folks to boost the general revenue fund of the city. So what if we persuade him to start imposing fines? Because we insist that they all go into a special dedicated fund, Director Miller, that is applied to grants for low-income owners that are in environmental court to get into compliance. We already have some federal money, which is down and down and down and down. But we've got well-established process by which low-income owner can get into compliance. And there's every reason to fine heavily the people who have not bothered to follow our rules,
Sure.
who are operating in many ways what we think of as a nuisance and a detriment to the neighborhood.
Right.
And especially if they are absentee owners. As far as I'm concerned, suck it all out of them.
Right.
Fine them to the max.
That's so
And
hard.
apply it to our own in need.
Yeah.
And we've got the tools to do that. We just need an ordinance out of the city board. And we need you to then make sure that everybody understands the process. Not only are they gonna say, greetings, you need to come into compliance, they need to add a paragraph that says, for failing to comply within the time limit, and there is a timeline,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have all the time in the world to come into compliance.
Sure, right.
And so the day they reach the deadline, they're in environmental court, and the day they come up before the judge, which won't lollygag around this time, they're starting to hit with, you're out of compliance, and you had every reason to be in compliance, $500 a day,
Yep.
and pay at the door.
Yep.
You've got an agent for notice of service. They got somebody there they can stick in jail. They don't do that either, and I can respect that. We got problems with jail crowding. But we might make an exception to prove the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And then, by God, after you stick two people in jail, nobody else is gonna go to jail. Because they're gonna come up with cash. And what's more, they may even come up with compliance, in which case we see a reduced revenue stream for this. But there's always gonna be knuckleheads out there.
Sure, sure.
So, let me submit that that is a process which we can go from a problem here to a solution there.
Absolutely. The synergy you just described is awesome. I really like that. I mean, please send that to me in an email. I really like
I'll
what
do
you-
that.
what you
Because
said.
all they need to do is pass an ordinance that says fines from the environmental court go into a special fund,
Yeah.
right? That shouldn't be a tricky thing.
Certainly bounce that off of the city attorney, or city attorney and the environmental judge. Agree with certain interpretations or certain actions, but, that's why we have city attorney to bounce these things off of, so, that's something we can definitely do.
We will pursue that.
Yeah. All right, let's get through it. Discuss sidewalk placement in Petaway. Seems bad to do what's here. I agree.
That was a blockage by order of city staff that was really stupid. And both the people who know about it are here, so let's
We
get
are
really out.
going to work.
Yeah, I want to comment first on the value of a walkable neighborhood.
Yes.
I've been gone for 3 weeks, come back walking the dog late before daylight saving time. See these forms laid out, that'd be an impossible situation. Just couldn't believe it, walked on up to the corner, met our neighborhood association who was walking up Commerce Street, the benefit of a walkable neighborhood. I said, Anita, have you seen this over here? And walk over and show her. And so it goes. But that just the value, people out walking, neighbor meeting neighbor.
Right.
We need to ensure that, particularly within the core, the heart of the city.
Connectivity is important, and we are working to solve this issue. I'll tell you that much. And I know I've discussed this with Director Miller. So let's see. Discuss infill policy and address obstacles that should be removed. Look at the example of 9 units, 709, 717 West 32nd Street.
That was just on the city agenda, and it was fascinating to me to see the sketch, because they had, small lots, but they had tucked in 9 living units. And it, on the face of it, did not look that out of, compatibility. That's something that I think all of us are quite concerned about. We've seen some uglies come in.
Yeah.
That really are sore, red, pulsing offense to the eye on that block. And we don't want any more of that, which was why we asked, do you have that in your review process to prevent, assure compatibility, let me put it that way. And once upon a time, we had architectural drawings to urge people to build infill that was compatible. Because here was your blueprints, you didn't have to buy them.
Right.
Do they have still that?
We do not have that. I know Miss Hannah Raslav. She is a incredible designer, and she. To answer the question, do we help people out architecturally and give them suggestions? Yes. There was a group that came through planning commission, I guess a couple of months ago. Looked like the design of their property was not within keeping of what the standard of the neighborhood looked like. I mean, with historic preservation and infill development, you don't want to recreate history, but you certainly want to take those little aspects and sort of nod back to the past. You know, if it's a craftsman style neighborhood, and you want to have maybe some exposed rafter tails, or maybe
We don't want a geodesic dome home.
there's definitely no geodesic domes, and craftsman style houses are
Not in my neighborhood. I'm in the Governor's Mansion Historic District. There's other places they can put that.
geodesic homes. But I will say that Mr. Gerald Gregory, what he is doing, I support. I support what Mr. Gregory is doing. Mr. Gregory has grown up here in Little Rock. He has started a construction company. He has done a great infill here in the city. He's a great guy to work with. He and his wife, believe they're now pretty high up in one of their neighborhood organizations. We work really well with him, and I support what Mr. Gregory's been doing here in the city for infill development.
And that's on the city agenda from like 2 weeks ago, if you folks want to go look at the sketches and stuff.
Yeah.
It was really exciting. I can't remember if I passed that on to folks or not.
Yeah. And just his story. He's a great dude. He's a great story, and I think he is.
Can you do more like that?
Yeah, I think he plans to. He and his wife are valued to the city of Little Rock. I do believe that.
Yeah, let me add, Gerald Gregory grew up in the South End.
Yep.
And what he's wanting to do in the South End of Little Rock, which is south of Roosevelt, is develop that much like what Michael Orndorff has done in Petaway.
Yep.
And so we certainly support him. We've asked him to get involved. His wife, Veronica, is now president of the South End Neighborhood Group. And so we are certainly supportive of his development plans and try to bring him resources as far as public safety services, infrastructure services. We want to support his development. He's built about half dozen houses south of Roosevelt. Has plans for at least a half dozen more. When we have development like that, it encourages other development. Gerald Gregory is just not the only one that's doing some things like that. Certainly what you've seen in Stevens neighborhood and what Robert Alexander's doing over there is certainly some of the same things that has happened over in Petaway and what's happening over in the South End. We encourage that.
Yes.
And so we're looking for folks to do more of that type of development. And a lot of development is going on over in East Little Rock too.
Yeah, that's exciting.
East Village, certainly what is happening with Ken Hayes as the developer over there too, so there are a lot of exciting things going on. The city can certainly be supportive of that, but that example, Kathy, of what you pointed out on hot topics there, Brad, is I think a reflection of what can happen in an area when you have people working together.
Yes, sir.
Wanted to elevate the subject and that we've got good stuff and it can be done properly.
Sure.
So, it also means that you should really be, as neighborhood leaders, nosy when you see, activity and people standing around a vacant lot. Hi there, what's going on? Who's building this?
Yeah.
Do you have a sketch we can look at? Come to our neighborhood meeting.
Yeah.
All of that is really important to defend your neighborhood against the bad and to elevate the
Absolutely.
good.
And call me. I mean, anyone can call me if you see someone going on in your neighborhood, if you want to know what's going on or have questions about it, give me a call, man. I love to talk to people and I love to fix problems and answer questions.
And that's why you gave us your number direct at the first screen.
That's right. If
Would you
anyone wrote
repeat?
that down,
And repeat the number for us now.
501-371-6817.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have another topic.
Okay.
I appreciate the meeting. Kathy sent me the invitation. It's a great opportunity for you to meet you in person.
Yes, thank you.
But I have a question concerning the stormwater drainage manual.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's actually done. If you can see number 7, the very blurry number 7
I
down
sent it to Kathy.
down at the bottom. So I'll just jump ahead.
You don't have to give us the background.
No, so I'll tell you.
Status.
Sure, I'll tell you exactly where we are in that process. So we took it to the board of directors. We presented to the board of directors. The board of directors asked us to go back to the stakeholders, whether it be the engineers, the developers, all the people that would be affected by this. And so over the past couple of months, we have met together, I believe it's around 8 times. The stakeholders have met together, and we have taken sort of line by line what we're asking. And I think that of the 10 items that we had requested in our initial draft, I think that we compromised with them, and not compromised anything about the city, but just were able to work it in a way where it was beneficial for all of us. We did that with 8 of 10 of those items, and
But now it came up to the planning commission the last 2 meetings ago.
it was a couple months
And
ago.
they voted it down.
Yeah.
So now what?
Well, the board makes the decision.
So you're not revising it based on White Dater's comments at that meeting?
Mr. Daters has been a part of our discussions
He was very happy.
in our stakeholder. He has been very active in our stakeholders meetings. So with all of the things you probably heard in the planning commission meeting, we've all talked about.
Right. Planning commission voted it down. What is the planning department's position on that storm drainage manual?
I think that the planning commission wanted to talk about it more.
They voted it down.
Yeah, but they wanted to defer it another month. We had until the end of the year.
But they didn't. They voted it down.
That's what I'm saying. They would have deferred it if we would have let them. But we asked for a vote because we needed it to move it to the board level. The board makes the decision on this.
When is it coming up to the board?
This Tuesday is when we will be sharing the board again what the stakeholders
This
have said.
Tuesday?
Yes, this Tuesday.
I didn't see it on the agenda.
Yeah, it's there.
That's the industrial.
No, that's not the industrial. This is the stormwater drainage
Oh,
manual.
they misprinted it, quite
They
honestly.
typo the agenda, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, the industrial one was last. They did the industrial one last time.
This Tuesday, okay.
So yeah, the manual itself and our MS4 permit stuff, we'll be presenting to the board on Tuesday and just showing them what the new manual, the new draft looks like after talking to the stakeholders, and we'll be presenting exactly how we've compromised and how we've worked with the developers and others.
Will you personally be advocating for the approval of the plan?
Yes.
I was in on some of the early meetings. Somehow, they never notified me about all this other stuff coming along. But then I was a very vocal call for strict, more and stronger action that I know that the developers weren't willing to pay for. And it's not surprising to me that White Daters is asserting a particularly strong set of compromises, because that's his day job. But let me ask at this point, what is the status in the draft coming with your approval forward to the board on Tuesday the 12th? I think it's the 12th.
Yeah.
The issue of recognizing we should be allowing for more frequent storms and more heavy rainfall.
Yep.
That's going to put more stress on stormwater retention ponds.
Yeah, I'll tell you, to answer that question, here's one of the items that we were able to all agree on, is detained for the 100-year storm.
The old 100-year storm that is out the window?
Well,
Really?
Mm-hmm. Well, we were only having to detain for the 25-year storm currently. So if we're detaining for the 100-year storm for everything, I mean, that's going to significantly help.
Okay, let me shut up about that one. Calm down. I get passionate about this stuff because this is the nitty-gritty of government service and protecting the citizens in a way that almost every citizen will never be told about, have the education to understand about, and know to speak up for themselves about.
That's
So
correct.
advocates like us need to probably get these meetings, go to these meetings, put these comments on record, and then follow through. I'm a little distressed that, as I say, they lost my name off guest list, but that's not surprising with those folks. They don't want outsiders and lay folk to interfere with their profit pursuit. And I don't think they care as much as they should about stormwater detention that saves neighborhoods and saves lives. They look at what they're willing to build up to and no more in new developments.
Right.
But let me circle back around to all the others that have been sitting there now,
Mm-hmm.
that have been sitting there for decades in some instances. And I remember being told when I asked this question, there's no inspection of any of these. We don't know how well they're holding up. We don't know whether any of them are beginning to need new reconstruction and support.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still the case? Everything that's out there now, we're just hoping for the best, and if it slumps one day, then we'll go after it and pick up after the pieces.
I think we're going to look at it from a holistic standpoint. I think that we have to. I think if we're going to initiate something that's going to affect something upstream, downstream is going to be directly affected by that. We also have to worry about water quality. What goes into the Arkansas River? I mean, what about like Foosh Creek? What about Brody Creek? I mean, I think that these are two impacted bodies of water that are important to our city. How do we help that? I think it's incumbent on us to do that. Stormwater. Before I got into planning and zoning, to your point, Kathy, the layperson really doesn't know much about it. But I promise you, it's something that's weighs on my mind all the time.
Especially in a heavy rainstorm like that.
Exactly. I mean, and because you never want to hear that, I've lived in my house for 40 years, and because of development that's happened in the past too, now instead of having a beautiful backyard I can just sit in, now it's a swamp. You never want to hear that. That's horrible.
Is that, in fact, an accurate description of the patterns we're seeing in development? We in the inner city, in the original city, tend to think of, they go out to a piece of raw ground and they cut down the pine trees and they build a whole new subdivision. And then they go west of that, and then they go west of that, and then they go out of Chenal. and we struggle, but we don't get infill, which is not the same thing as a major project with major stormwater off the scraped hillside. But to say it back to you, to make sure I understand it, along the major drainage lines of the city, Forest Creek being a good example, there's new development downstream, or don't even let me see downstream. There's new development along Forest Creek, which has a distinct connection to the neighbors. Now, I thought we had a statute that said from now on forever, if you built new in the city of Little Rock, you are required by law to make sure that you retain on your property and don't let it run off to the neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
On stormwater.
Yeah, you can't.
Right? So
you
if
can't.
I go out and I build 100 subdivision homes, I'm not supposed to let any water off the property
That's right.
today.
You're not supposed to. It's supposed to come off your property in the same rate that it did before you put anything in there.
So I need my own detention pond off to the side is in effect what we're talking about.
You will have to detain for the 100-year storm, but you can't I think to
Isn't
answer
there
your
a
question.
lot of illegal stuff that nobody's catching and making them do right?
Probably
Because you've only got, what, one inspector for that?
for stormwater.
For checking that new construction building permits, clearing their lots.
Right. Yeah.
Stuff.
We have 3 individuals that do
Okay.
that. Yes, ma'am. But yeah, you're not supposed to put water on other people. Robert.
You cannot actually regulate UAMS because they're a state agency, so they're building all those lovely multi-story parking decks and all that flat surface now instead of what used to be homes with yards and everything to soak up the rainwater. So everything now dumps quickly into Rose Creek and comes downstream. And we had a resident who nearly drowned in his home in a torrential rain event that I can remember.
Drowned in his home by UAMS?
But he lived downstream. He lived much closer to the state capitol. He was a veteran.
Oh my gosh.
And the waters rose so high, his neighbors had to come rescue him because he couldn't move very well. And Rose Creek does have
That's
a flood zone, and somebody a half block away from me, they bought the house on a sales contract instead of a mortgage, because with the mortgage, they would have had to be told that their house could flood.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people have found themselves having to buy flood insurance because they came out in 2020. FEMA came out with a new flood map, and a lot of people that were not in the floodplain before are in the floodplain now, and they have to buy flood insurance and having to answer those calls. Thankfully, when I was in Benton, that's when that happened. But I was answering phone calls every single day, like, I just got a bill from the insurance company, from the flood insurance, the federal, agency that does this. Why do I have to do this? I've lived here for 30 years, never had to do it before. But it's because of, well, there's a lot of impacts. There's a lot of reasons why this is. It could be development, it could be silted in creeks, it could be
And that goes back to my question about what's there now. And is anybody going to look at any of that with engineering qualifications?
Oh yeah. We need to, if there's impacted creeks, we need to help that. And
If there's violations, does it go to environment? Is that where it goes?
That's a good question.
Because
Because who owns these retention ponds?
I believe that it would go to environmental court.
That would be my understanding as well, which we don't have any.
Well, we just, like I said, we need to persuade Judge Leverett to start imposing fines, and when we give him an incentive, I think we can see movement in that direction. So let's just see if we can't get that done. But this is troublesome. Thank you. I think the coalition needs to write a letter to the board for the Tuesday agenda item on that topic about compromised enough, get on with it to save the city from drowning.
Appreciate that.
Paraphrasing that. Feel
Well-
free
well,
to send me
you know,
proposed language on that.
We've worked really, really hard on this, and I'm thankful for everyone that had been involved in it. I think we all came to the table in good faith, but ultimately, It's about the future of the city. You know, here's another trivia question for you. I love them. Love trivia questions. When do you guys think the last time that we passed a stormwater drainage manual was?
73.
Close. Did you just throw them out there? I'll no more suspense. It was 1984.
Oh, ironic, sorry.
Yeah.
I almost said that, that's my birth year.
1984. See? You would have won the ultimate prize. Now we never know who will. But I mean, think about it. Think about it. We were doing things that were 40 years ago. I mean, so we had to do something. We have to do something now that in 40 years, someone could be born today, and it would affect them 40 years from now. Think about that. That's what our charge is right now. And that's why we're taking it this is so important to us. Because it's not just about 5 years, 10 years. It's about generations. And how do we want and if we want our city to continue to build and continue to grow, that means more development. But that also means there's impacts in other ways. How do you mitigate that? Ms. Mel?
Well, let's revise the definition of grow, which people automatically seem to think means, like I said, scraping off a bunch of pine trees and building those. Of white fly are sitting there in the older parts of the neighborhood. Let's call it east of University. That's not strict, but that's a good description of it. And getting the inventory and then seeing where that leads us for redevelopment promotions.
Mm-hmm.
What would you be interested in doing? Would you like to ask for that taxpayer list from the assessor's office and map it and work with some folks to promote redevelopment? I respect your comment that the city can't acquire this itself and own it and deal with it.
Yeah.
But we could publicize it like crazy,
Yeah.
I think.
We were
Could we not direct that? We had a list of 8,000 votes.
We already know where all these vacant lots are. We have that information.
All 8,000 of them?
If it's a vacant lot in the city, certainly in Ward 1 and Ward 2, we have that information.
I think we had, sorry to interrupt you, Director
Thank
Miller,
you.
just to your point, I think that we have, our GIS folks have that information, and they've been working closely with Director Howard in Housing on this, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, so, answer the question, we have this information. Certainly one of the things that we want to do is to get our land bank more active. We saw a couple of developers who were building houses infield. Director Howard actually saw these developers, went up to them and said, you need to be getting some property out of the land bank. Consequently, they got 3 more lots out of the land bank.
Yeah.
And so there's some things we want to encourage infield development. We are certainly not encouraging a lot of demolition when we have all these vacant lots. There are ways that we try to encourage that. Certainly our friends over at Acorn would love for us to be more aggressive and even talk about a land trust. But we do have a land bank. And so we are making efforts to try to do more with infield and try to incentivize developers and builders to do more with that.
Could we look at that map
Oh,
somewhere?
yes.
Access somehow?
Certainly, I can get you the information.
I'll send you an email and then I'll depend on my wonderful technical support, Mary Hinthorn, to arrange for us to get it out to everybody. Or get the link out, everybody can go look at it. I bet you it's where we're going with that.
Because Director Ag.
Get a task, Mary.
reminds me a lot of- in Ward 1.
Okay. Well, it just astonishes me that this knowledge hasn't gotten widely known and publicized, because you can't fix a thing unless you've got it defined and recorded and in inventory.
We know.
And we just haven't got that out to the folks living next door.
Right.
One of the things I've learned in the past years, just as a side note, is that one of the best prospects to purchase a vacant lot in these historic districts in particular is the neighbor next door. Because remember, these are pretty much small lots, and these are the folks who would be first in line if you promoted it and contacted them and said, wouldn't it be great if, to acquire it for a lovely garden with water features, a lovely addition, and most of our stuff in my neighborhood is duplex R4 zoning already. So if I get the lot next door to my house, I can put up an accessory dwelling, is the phrase, and get some income. And then we have infill that way. We expand the rental market. And there's a critical need for rentals.
Yep.
So if we just kind of put together the memo and said, hey, looky here, and wouldn't you be interested in? We are missing an asset in a promotion. I hope we do.
Yeah. Point. You guys have any more questions for me?
Are there, and not what 100 year past, 100 year now, are the FEMA maps current within the city?
FEMA maps are current, yes.
Okay. Did I run into another state,
Yep.
another city, public
Yep.
service project got held up
And if you
for
have,
a long time?
yeah, if you have any questions, I can access that within a layer on my planning viewer. So I can tell you exactly where the floodplain are.
Is that posted where we can access it on that city data hub?
Yeah, I believe that you can do that. If you go to Planning and Development, our website, you just Google Little Rock Planning and Development, be the first hit. Interactive maps. If you like maps, this is your place. You will go in a rabbit hole in this thing. Fun with maps.
Somehow the city website works better some days than others for me, but I'm not technically skilled. That's one reason I'm saying. If we can get pointed to it, then everybody else can go out there and
Yes.
pursue it on their own and not
Interactive maps.
have me as a faulty interconnection.
There are several maps on that. Look for where it says zoning interactive map, and I believe one of the layers up there is the firm. FIRM. Floodplain insurance right now. Okay. Well, again, thank you all for having me. This has been awesome. I love talking. And I love talking about the city of Little Rock. So again, thank you so much.
I did want to take this opportunity to thank Director Miller for speaking up at the city budget meetings yesterday to pass on a request we had made that in the 2025 budget, they add 10 positions for rental inspectors, not 5. How well was that received?
Well, to give you guys a big picture view of the discussions, let's just back up 1 second and take a moment to put this in perspective. As we know, the sales tax passed, voters have spoken, and I certainly tried to emphasize that at every neighborhood meeting that I was attending coming up to the election, that the sales tax may or may not pass, but we're going to have a budget. And so we really need to start focusing in on budget discussions. And you as residents really need to probably get more involved with the budget discussions. Just to tell you that we have a overall budget of somewhere around about, let's say, $330 million. We anticipate that we'll have a growth of about 1% in overall revenues. So what is that, about $3.3 million. During the budget discussions yesterday, which were presented by all different departments, of course, Brad was there and made his presentation along with other departmental directors. Discussion started at 9 a.m. We were through at 5, a little after 5 p.m.
Let me point out here that we got posted to our group and on our Facebook page last night, thank you, Mary, the 2 session 1 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon links. So you can go right to the video and you can see for yourself what everybody said for themselves. It was very interesting to me in the way that people were dealing with hot bush initiative, just small side swipe here. We'd had her a lot to talking about vehicles and breakdowns and embarrassing yard waste failures and so forth. So the first several discussions were about finally beginning a formal fleet vehicle rotation and replacement policy. Our fleet director, Willie Hinton, no kin to the one whose brain we're in, was really impressive, professional, making a presentation. He also was given thanks because he is now, for the first time ever, setting up a police vehicle rotation and replacement program, as well as a public works rotation and replacement. So our city hall folks overall are heeding some of the folks that are screaming the loudest. Let me just sum it up like that. And went on through the day. So back to you, Virgil.
No, that's fine. That's a great observation. And of course, if you looked at the whole thing, you will know that we had over $46 million worth of new requests. So when you think about, we're going to have a growth of somewhere around about 1%, about 3.3 million. And we had a request of about $46 million. And of course, that didn't even take into consideration a lot of input from the board members now about things that we like and things that we would like to see. So there's obviously going to have to be some compromise and certainly some creative ways to try to get some things done. So put that in perspective. And then when you also think a little bit more about this, police and fire are about 58% of our budget. Police and fire also represent about 50% of the overall staff of the city of Little Rock, employees. So when you factor in the 58%, then that leaves us 42% to deal with all the rest of the departments. Now, there are other sources of funds other than what we get, general revenue, but that gives you some idea of the challenges that we are facing. I am bullish on dealing with issues around unsheltered individuals. I think that's extremely important because that affects a whole lot of things. I had a phone call this morning from Director Adcock, who informed me that the Walgreens at University and Colonel Glenn or Asher has closed. And so we are certainly having to deal with, businesses that are affected in some part, sometimes by the unsheltered. I can tell you that discussions I've had about Kroger at Roosevelt and Springer, the corporate offices in Memphis have told us we would love to make some improvements. Can the city give us some dollars, maybe $200,000 to do incentives to try to fix that place up? Where does that stop? If the city starts giving money to private businesses, there's got to be a better way. So we're obviously talking to them. I'm talking to them about, well, what is it going to take to keep this crow rolling? What improvements are you looking for? What percentage of additional sales are you looking at? We want to have that discussion with them, because when they start telling you about what they need, they're really kind of setting it up to close. Tell you, that's what my gut is. It's probably next year or so. And then when they announce the closing, everybody's gonna get outraged. We'll have a bunch of community meetings. They'll send down their community relations person from Memphis. We'll have all these meetings, we'll do all that, but they ain't gonna stop the building. So we've got to do something about that right now. And so I have encouraged all my friends and residents that live in that area close to that Kroger, use that Kroger. That's the store I shop at. I live downtown. And so I would encourage them to do that. We can probably do some live remotes. We can do a lot of other things there to try to get some interest. Yes.
One of the things that I have encountered in my actions around the state is the employees acquired the Harps grocery stores in central north Arkansas. Marshall is a store I shop at that is employee-owned, and they have a couple of more up and down Highway 65. If you haven't gotten briefed on that, let me encourage you to look at that, because one of the things that seems to me possible with the flow of activity, the city wants to promote business. They do all this stuff. We just had a big rah-rah out at the Port of Little Rock, 500 jobs for Who's What's company. But they also talk about small business engine for development. Is it possible that the city could facilitate employee acquisition of this store to keep it going, and then it becomes a small business category investment in promotion and incentive, whatever those are for the city, or wherever you might whomp up.
Yeah. I mean,
To use a really technical phrase there.
No, all ideas are on the table. As you know, the Kroger on Colonel Glenn closed, but then, another grocer came in and acquired that. And so, we want to look at all options to do something like that.
And also, if you can redevelop the lots around that, as we know, those development follows the rooftops. If you can get a nice surge of population back in that area, that becomes a lot more attractive business venue.
It is, and
That'll take time, I grant you.
there may be some out parcel opportunities around development too there. So that's certainly what we're looking at. Yes.
Just FYI, Harps did take over the tiny Kroger in England market, so.
Really?
It
Have you been in
closed.
that store?
Yeah, both before and after. It was Kroger
And is it maintaining quality operation?
It appeared that way. It had just been in once since Harps had it. But it's interesting that Harps moved this far from their central.
So that's an opportunity that we look at. So big picture on budget discussions.
There'll be blood and knives on the floor before you adopt a budget, we understand.
I mean, we anticipate about $3.3 million in additional revenues. We had requested about $46 million. So,
What about that famous emergency reserve, which stood at $13 million?
we certainly have opportunities to look at what we have in reserves, but certainly we want to keep maintain that around 10-15% that we have reserves in cities budget. So we're looking at all those things, but again.
Have you got a written policy on what you spend it on?
Well, we have a policy on how much we want to retain, but then we have a lot of flexibility as to what's an emergency and what's not. So we want to probably kind of keep it that way, to give us the flexibility to go in, like to maybe buy some more garbage vehicles or something like that when there's a tremendous need. So we look at that. We know we have those funds, but certainly there are definitions of emergency that some city
Something that we
ordinance
worked out, yeah.
may have that I may not agree with. But I may have a definition about emergencies that some other board members may not have. So
Truly a big point of contention. Let me ask about another category. I know that the state law protects all of us by requiring that those cities and counties adopt a budget for the forthcoming year
Yes.
no later than December 31st.
House budget, yes.
And if you do not do that, as I recall, you are in criminal noncompliance, and you could be prosecuted by the local elected prosecutor for not doing your duty. So that's why everybody brags about how we're gonna have a balanced budget this year. They don't have a choice, there's a gun to their head. They don't talk about that. But I also remember, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, that the state law also says that you may spend no more than 90% of your revenue, because they don't want anybody going to bankruptcy.
You have
So you've always got,
reserve requirements, yes.
so you've got a reserve requirement apart from this thing that you voluntarily put money into over the years. So if we've got 330 million, I don't know if the street funds and the special stuff adds to it,
No.
but let's call the 330 is sitting there, and 10% of that can never be spent. Could that be pledged as collateral for some leveraging activity? Is my question to you. Has anybody ever pursued that?
The bank had to say no. That,
Okay.
if you're pledging it, it's not really unrestricted.
Okay,
It's pledged.
well, I got my question answered. Do we have any others? We're at the end of the period.
Can you give a quick and dirty as to why the sales tax failed? Sales taxes, both of them.
I would think, as the motto of the first Clinton administration, when Clinton ran, is the economy. And so people just have other challenges. It's a tough economy. And so I think that's certainly part of it. There'll be a deep dive in all the precincts. I think we're looking at that now. So there's more information to come about that. Two announcements I'd like to make before
Yes, sir.
you adjourn your meeting. The Cornbread Festival is currently going on, 11 o'clock in Solon. I'm running over there as soon as I leave here to get me some cornbread. After that, I'm going to run up to Chili Fights in the Heights to eat my cornbread with some chili. That's going on.
That's gonna work out well for you.
That's going on. Chili Fight started at 11 o'clock too. I think that runs to about 2. Cornbread Festival runs from 11 to 4. So if you're not doing anything, please come out and support these activities that build neighborhood and build our city and enjoy a couple of these festivals. Bring your umbrella and come out and enjoy the city.
And my final announcement is that we wanted to finish this year, which had a lot of ups and downs, with a celebration of all the successes in our neighborhoods. So December the 14th meeting of the coalition year is going to be basically a holiday party. So we're gonna ask y'all to come, bring a potluck dish for refreshments. And in the meantime, submit photographs to Mary. I sent that email out with her email and name on it, of all the good things you pulled off this year, like those vegetables you've been harvesting from that Petaway Community Garden. I'll bet you got some pictures. So send some of them to Mary, and we can create a slideshow that we will show on the 14th, and just visit and support each other and learn things from each other that we don't know. So come back with your potluck and your brags on December the 14th here at 10 o'clock at the Hinton Center. Thanks. We are adjourned.
All right.